Okay, what's your name again? Lewis Heath, is it?
Lewis Heath.
Lewis Heath. And you're from what brand, is it? AnOrdain's?
Yeah, that is actually how you say it. So it doesn't. No, it's not. It's not.
God, I'd be so embarrassed if it turned out after all these years I've been saying it wrong. It's an-OR-dain.
No, did I not tell you that? I was up in Ascent a couple of years ago. I can't remember. Maybe last winter it was. And I was up there with one of the crofters that I'm friends with, and this is like in the middle of nowhere. And we were coming down off the hill, and he knew, like, he knows what I do, but it's never kind of been talked about. And he pointed over to an-OR-dain, and this is an area where there's like hundreds of little loch-ons, and and he pointed there, and he said, the locals call that an-OR-dain. And I was like, look at him. And he's like, don't worry, I thought it was an-OR-dain as well to start with, but it's not. So it has been wrong the whole time. But
you're kidding.
No, I mean, it's like there are probably 3 people that live within, a few miles of that place. So I don't even know if the people who know what it's called are still alive, apart from my friend. But it's it's nice to have a different name, because we're not a stretch of water, we're a watch company. So there is some differentiation between the two, but yeah.
No, it's good to be able to draw a sharp distinction between those two things. You do not want to be confused as a body of water.
You don't want to buy one and get the other, do you? Because that would be messy.
Wet.
So, yes.
Yeah. Well, unless you bought the water and then you ended up with a useless.
Thanks, Rob. Useless watches, eh?
Well, no, I'm not saying the watch itself is useless, but it's only useful for the application for which it's designed.
Yeah, you couldn't fish in it, could you? Know?
Right, there you go. Useless for fishing.
Yes, yes.
You with me?
And you couldn't get a boat in it either. So no, I do see where you're coming from, but I think this is detouring, isn't it? Do the introduction, for fuck's sake, come on.
Okay, shut up. Jesus Christ. These guests keep yammering on. Hi, hello, watch fans, and welcome to another edition of the Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighbourhood watchmaker, Rob Nuts. Today, I am joined by my good friend and founder of the Scottish watch phenomenon, that is an-OR-dain.
Hi, Rob. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too, Lewis of an-OR-dain. It's wonderful to have you on this show.
Don't spread misinformation, please, on the
Okay, well, it is on Watchmaking's most interactive podcast now. It is live and it is out there. It is in the public ether. So please, people, let's refer to the watch brand as an-OR-dain, as we have done since its very first days of existence, which were when, Lewis? When did an-OR-dain first birth into the world? Publicly
appeared in 2018.
It feels like it's been around a lot longer.
We were around before for several years, but obviously not visible to the public.
So when did the idea to start a watch brand first germinate in your mind?
I feel like I have always answered the same things on podcasts, and I get so bored myself of saying the same things. Everyone who has ever listened to one of them must be really, really fed up with me saying the same things over. So I might make up this answer if it's okay, Rob. Would that be all right?
You can totally make it up, but how famous do you think you are? I've never heard a podcast with you on it ever once in my life.
Nor have I. I've done 3 of them, but I said the same thing on all of them.
Who else have you done? Who else?
The OT.
Okay, that's a good one. Oh, of course.
I did the OT twice. But then the last time I did the OT, I talked about something that we hadn't managed to make, and so they haven't let that one out. And I did Scottish Watches as well. Yeah.
Well, Scottish Watches is amazing. Obviously, it's the biggest active podcast in the watchmaking industry at the moment. Well, Hodinkee technically has more downloads, but Hodinkee's been a bit on the shelf, it would seem, since Jack left. So I'm sure Hodinkee will push again in the future. But right now, Ricky and Dave are top of the tree. And we love them over at Scottish Watches. We also love the OT. That's Felix, right?
Felix and Andy, yeah. They're very nice. Very kind of, there's a nice sort of laid back vibe.
Are you saying that I'm not laid back?
Well, you're not. You're more, I would say, intense would be a nice way of.
You can say it in a nasty way if you want. I can take it.
No, I think your tempo is just slightly turned up in comparison to kind of, especially Felix, who's a fairly laid back Australian.
Yeah, I am quite highly strung. Yeah, that's fair.
I didn't say that.
I know. In fairness, you didn't. No,
but it's a more productive way of being, I suppose, isn't it? You do get you were churning out the articles at Fratello.
I've been churning out the articles for years in all different places. I used to write before I was with Fratello. Would you believe it? I was writing 54 articles a month.
Wow.
And I was working for A Blog to Watch, Bob's Watches, Borrow Blog, Time and Tides, Scholar, Joma Shop, and I don't know who else, but a lot. And,
Wow.
because one of my friends, a watchmaker, Theo Prensel from Nomos Glasseter, who was very interested in the writing game, asked me how many articles I had to write a month, assuming, actually, as it turned out, that it would be as many as 4 or 5. And when I told him that I was like averaging,
that put him off.
Yeah, his eyes like rolled back. He couldn't believe it. He was gobsmacked. And he was like, how do you like have the stamina for it? And he said, is there that much to say about watches? And that really made me laugh because he literally invents calibers for a living. And he asked me, I was like, well, you never know. I mean, it's amazing. But I tell you why there's so much to say. It's because of brands like yours, Lewis, because there's always something different going on. I'm not being kind. I'm not kind.
You are.
I'm very matter of fact.
On the podcast, not off the podcast. You're not,
I'm a real bastard off the podcast, that's for sure. But yeah, you are like one of the leading lights in British watchmaking at the moment. So why don't you tell us a little bit about an-OR-dain's USP for anybody that hasn't encountered you on previous podcasts?
Thanks, Rob. Well, we make things in Glasgow. Mostly, we are known for doing enameling. So vitreous or grand fur enameling, which is molten glass powder essentially on fused to metal for the dials. And that's really how we started out, was taking a very traditional kind of watchmaking craft that's difficult to do and kind of combining it with colors and sort of a more contemporary approach to design, I suppose. And that's where things started. And it's really, I mean, the thing about the company that keeps me interested is it's a group of very, very nice, very talented people who work together, and you're always getting fascinating stuff coming out of it. So we've got early 20s people, so maybe 23 or 24 altogether, 17 or 18 of whom are in the studio every day, and they're a mixture of people from sort of watchmakers to jewelers who've become enamelers. But within the jewelry kind of area, you've got people specializing in glass blowing, silversmithing, all these kind of different fields, and then you've got designers like the imaging, typography. You've got photography, and so you've just got this big kind of place with lots of people crossing over. So you tend to have a constant stream of interesting things to distract you when you're there, which is nice.
So you say this is where it started, this very artisanal route to creating watches, but why did it start there? What's your background and how did you find yourself in this position?
Design is my background. I studied architecture in Edinburgh, and then I got into product design because I graduated during the credit crunch, what was it, 14 years ago? And there were no architecture jobs. So I kind of fell into product design and went that way. And I had always, at the back of my mind, I'd always been interested in making watches. And it wasn't because I was a huge watch fan at the time, actually. It was because I thought it was a good idea. And it'd been an idea that kind of had sat with me since I was about 18 or 19. And just the idea that you could combine all these really interesting things like engineering, design, craftsmanship, and luxury, and just put everything together, and it would be something that would suit making in Scotland. You have all these kind of skill sets, and I think I'd researched it back then, and there weren't any watches really made in Britain, and so it'd always been in the back of my mind, like, this is kind of the idea that I'm going to do. And so I got some experience and got a bit of money from the previous company I ran, and then I left there to do this full time, and yeah, that's where it came from.
So how many people are working now in an-OR-dain, and how many? I mean, this is difficult to answer numerically off the top of your head, I'm sure, but how many different crafts do we have? Because your slogan is "New hands, old crafts." Is it that way around?
It's the other way around, but no, that's very well remembered.
Old crafts, new hands.
Because enameling, for example, watch style enameling in the UK was extinct according to the Heritage Crafts Association, and then when we started doing it, they listed it as endangered, and now I don't believe it's endangered anymore because we have 8 or 9 enamelers now. So it is this idea of taking these really old crafts and it's kind of a case of relearning them, especially with something like dial enameling. It's such a niche thing, and the people who knew how to do it are either dead or incredibly secretive. And so there's no books on it, there's no websites, there's no YouTube things that are going to tell you anything of use. So it really is just working it out for yourself. And that's why it took us years to get to the point where we could make a dial.
So if I wanted to learn how to become a dial enameler, which I actually kind of low-key do, and I think I've mentioned this to you a few times already, how would I go about it? Would I come to you with my cap in hand and beg you, please, sir, take me on as an apprentice. I'll do anything to become a dial enameler.
I wouldn't say, I don't think that was, I mean, you could do that, but it's not, I'd have to ask the team and,
Would it help if I put on the sort of Artful Dodger Cockney accent, or would it be better if I just asked him my regular?
I might work against you, actually.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, Rob.
Not a fan of accents.
I don't know. We can, yeah. Well, no, it's a good accent. I just think it might kind of
freak you out. It's a bit freaky.
Yeah, it might. I
mean, I'm a fully grown man, obviously, so it's a bit weird to be talking like a Cockney child. But yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, Are you looking for more enamelers? Are you looking to expand the team?
No, I mean, we're in an unusual and I think really good situation at the moment where we have a very good team and we've got all our orders kind of booked up for the next few years. So I think for us, we've kind of been able to forecast ahead to see what we need to keep everyone paid and everything going well. And being able to factor in development work as well, which is the bit that everyone really enjoys. So I think working with the team we've got at the moment is the way that I'm planning to do it. Just because you've got other. I mean, I think people seem to be very seem to just have this presumption that bigger is better, and the more you make, the more you sell, and the more people you have is kind of automatically bigger. But I think actually what you can do with a relatively small team that are very close knit and is, I wouldn't kind of underestimate that. And I think there's definitely benefits to staying relatively kind of lean.
I would agree. I mean, as you know, I work quite closely with Arcanaut, and that's a company that also makes its dials by hand and has a very small team of very specifically talented individuals. And obviously the general goal of brands is to grow, but the interpretation of what growth is something that we should talk about more often as an industry, because as you say, keeping the team small, keeping it close knit, that's a very dynamic place to be. Also keeping demand higher than supply is perhaps able to be is also wise to keep people interested in the brand. Obviously, one doesn't want to take that too far, as we've seen, certainly not manufacture it artificially. But when we're talking about an artisanal brand whose production is intrinsically tied to the number of sufficiently talented individuals available to work for the brand, it's much more understandable. an-OR-dain is a watchmaker, but it is a craft company. Perhaps even before it's a watchmaker. I mean, what's the most important thing about the watch? It isn't actually the movement inside it. It's the way that time is communicated to the wearer via that dial, which is the star of the show. Of course, you have your own cases or proprietary cases and everything, but the dial is really why people keep coming back time and time again to the an-OR-dain brand. And I know that in the first couple of years of the watches being available, it was difficult to meet the fervent demand for those pieces. What strategies did you implement thereafter, having had a bit of market experience in the watch industry, to manage people's expectations?
It's a case of playing it by ear and working out what the best thing to do at the time is, I think, because since we launched, we'd always had a little waiting list, like a few weeks or a few months. And it was the nature of when we started out, we had the 4 of us or 5 of us or whatever. And, we were lucky if we made a watch a week, because it was just, we didn't know, even though we'd been doing it for 3 years, we still we're miles off where we are today, and it's hopefully even further from where we will be in the future. So we always had a bit of a waiting list, and I think after a few years, it got bigger, and we didn't have any proper structure in place. It was just a little bit. Everything was completely, the structure was flat, and everything was a bit hectic, and so we'd kind of be running around trying to do this order in time or do this request for this person. So, and it got to the point where everyone was just totally frazzled and stressed out. And so we looked at it and said, look, let's try and make this efficient. And what we'll do is we'll produce watches for a month, and then at the end of the month, we'll put those watches on sale and people could buy them. And then we'll do the same the next month. And that will make life a lot easier. And to do that, we had to get over the kind of couple of month backlog we had. So we didn't have watches on sale for a few months. And so when the first batch went on sale, it went, very, very quickly. And we had lots of customers that were not very happy at all. And I still thought it was a good idea because it made, it worked so well for the team. It gave us so much more structure and it was so much more efficient. And so we did it again the second month, and people were even more annoyed. And so, so I just thought, you can't keep kind of annoying your customers, and we always we try not to do that, obviously. And so we had to think about this an awful lot, and we basically said, look, the fairest thing to do is just say, look, if you want a watch, you can have one, and it's going to be first come, first served, but it will take time to get the watch. So we then set up a waiting list and people joined, and then we've recently gone through the waiting list and kind of contacted people because we were being asked, where am I on the list and all this stuff, and you don't know where someone is if no one in front of them takes up the offer, or if everyone in front of them takes up the offer, it'll be completely different. So right. What we did is we went out to everyone and said, look, if you still want to buy one, you can put down a kind of small deposit and you will have a guaranteed build slot. So it's not for a watch, it's for whatever watch is available at the time, which will be, the idea is it's anything that's available now plus more things. And so you can kind of reserve this time slot for our production team.
In that sales model, the customer doesn't have a say in which piece it is that their deposit is going towards?
No, they don't need to, because they're not buying a piece, they're buying time. So they're buying the time to build a watch. So when it comes to your slot, say in March next year, whatever, you can choose whatever watch you want then.
Okay, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, this is a conversation that I've had with a few of my clients about when it comes to sales strategy, about how best to do it, because a couple of the brands that I work with are in the same position as you in that they have an artisanal chain of production and they can't guarantee that the models that they're able to produce are going to be the models that people want, and they didn't know whether to produce things in batches and then release the batches to the audience and allow them to be bought on a first come, first served basis, or whether to pre-sell exact models to people and give them a time slot. It's very interesting to hear that you've done that you've actually pioneered it. And how long have you been doing that for?
We started the waiting list last December, so a year ago, and we went out, started talking to people a couple of months ago about the build slots. So the kind of deposit aspect of it then. And yeah, so it's been about a year, but it is, I mean, I would say to, if anyone is trying to work this problem out, it is really difficult. And I don't think there is a perfect way of doing it. But what we found is just being kind of transparent with people and, just try to be as fair as you can is generally is well received. Like, you will always get a few people who are not terribly happy, but I think the model where you kind of people, when we were doing the batches and we can make, at the time we were making 35 a month or something, so it was tiny numbers, and compared to some other companies, I think when people look at you and they think that you're artificially limiting demand, then people do get very angry. And I can understand that from a kind of watch consumer's perspective as well. So I think just trying to create a system that's fair to people and that they understand is the kind of best way of doing things.
What's the percentage of deposit that you asked for?
It's £350, so it's a fixed amount rather than a percentage, because the watches are different prices, so they would be it would.
Okay. Oh, so the customers can reserve their time slot, their consultancy period, as it were, when they become like the client that you're working with directly, and they just pay that money down then, and then they can tell you, so they could go for a Model 1, a Model 2, or a Model 3, for example, in that discussion.
Yeah, they can get whatever they want. So it's it's a case of you put the deposit down, and then when your time comes, we get in touch and ask what you'd like, and then we produce it for you, and then you can pay the balance, and we'll send it out to you.
And then what options in terms of dials are available to them? Can they specify any previous dial that's been made, or can they even talk to you about something custom?
No, I mean, we have done custom watches in the past, and what you realize is that you lose money really, really well doing it. It's a fun thing, but a terrible idea. I mean, we were spending like 3 or 4 weeks working on a watch, and not charging any more for it. So it was pretty bad idea. But it does. I mean, we have had to be quite structured with the with our kind of production routines and things like that. So even though the watches are one-offs, you kind of, I think because the margins we work with are very slim, you don't really have time for, like, it takes several days to make a watch. So if you take any longer than that, then it soon becomes kind of a loss maker. And so that's the reason why we wouldn't do that. In terms of older dials, what we've found with Enamel is that you only have a few very good suppliers in the world, and we've had really nice enamels that we've worked with which have disappeared, or the companies couldn't produce them anymore. So we try and preempt that issue now. So I would hope that all the stuff we have today you could get in the future, but certainly a lot of the ones we've worked with in the past haven't been. We couldn't recreate.
So they're extinct now for good.
Yeah. Yeah, and even some colours, like the post office red, for example, was an enamel which we had to replace with another red. So it's a slightly different red now, but you could kind of date the someone's red dial to a certain period, and things like that. I think there are kind of double digits of those watches out there, even though they've been produced for a few years. So there's not huge amounts.
How exciting. So I'm going to test you now and see if you how many I love this, I can't wait for this. How many of the available colors you can name off the top of your head right now? Okay, so let's see, how many do we have 7?
Have you got the website?
I've got the website.
Can I open the website?
No, because then no.
I'm going to open the website.
Well, you can if
but you can't tell.
Type very subtly. You probably shouldn't have said that. You should have just stalled for a moment, or had a coughing fit, so I had to get it out.
Well, I will give you the answer to that, and what I would. I don't think I should be drawn into this, because I may come up with names that are for future products, and that would get me in trouble.
Oh, okay, all right. Open the website then. Tell us what colours we can order.
Well, there's lots of colours.
There's lots of colours. Wow, you are not a born salesman. You know that,
No, well, I take some pride in that, so it's all right.
All right, yeah, fair enough. All right, I'll help you out. Okay, so in the Model 1 lineup, you've got small Model 1, medium Model 1, and large Model 1. I
could have told you that. No, I thought you were talking about particular colours.
I am doing, yeah. So there's 4 colours available in each of these sizes. That's the Parisian blue, Japanese oxblood, which is really cool because it has this bright red print.
That was the post office red, but we had to...
Oh, that's better.
Alter it slightly.
It's so much better.
Well, thanks.
And you've got a sort of... It's not even bright red. It's like coral, really, that print, the minute track. Oh, what a lovely contrast. Oh, man, I shouldn't spend time on your website. Damn it. The Iron Cream, which is an off-white, and this one's notable for the fact it has blued hands. They're heat-treated, right?
Yeah, they're heat-treated. So they're not all blue, but they're all heat-treated. So some will be kind of a goldy straw colour, and some will be in the middle, and some will be blue. So that's something we've been doing for about 2 years now, and that's quite nice.
In the watch I made to graduate from watch school, I golded, or strawed, shall we say, my screws, because I'd blued my ratchet and crown wheels.
Oh, nice.
So I made the screws gold, and to do that, you heat them to 140 degrees as opposed to 280 for the blue.
So were you doing it in a kiln rather than by a lamp?
I actually did it by hand personally. I did it with a blowtorch in a bed of brass filings.
You got that temperature through having a thermometer in the brass firing?
No, I did it by eye, but that is just the chart.
Oh, I see. Right. That's the temperature. Yeah.
That's just the temperature. I can't, like, if you put a Bunsen burner on my hand, I can't tell you what temperature my skin is melting at. No, I'm not like that kind of weirdo. Okay, and the other color available in these 3 sizes is teal, which is really nice as well. Lovely, sort of greenish blue, more blue than green, I would say.
Kind of a teal color, isn't it? Yeah.
It's almost teal. Yeah, weird.
It's almost teal,
good choice of name. Very funny. And then in the medium size, you have 4 other options. The fume dials: green fume, Payne's grey fume, which is a dark charcoal, grey also, unsurprisingly, blue fume, and a plum fume, which is also unsurprisingly plum coloured. And that one is absolutely delicious. A picture of one of those that I took when I was in your workshop, I don't know when it was, 18 months ago, 2 years ago?
A while ago. Was it before the big C?
It can't be before COVID. No, it mustn't be. It mustn't be, because I was definitely working for Fratello, so it must have been when I was like on one of my rare trips.
Oh, it was. Yeah, no, I remember that. It was in a lighter period of.
Yeah. And I stumbled across this image that I'd taken when I was at your place of this watch, and it almost made me cry. And actually, I showed my girlfriend.
It was that bad?
No, the opposite. Like, it's so beautiful. The light had caught it in such a way. My girlfriend wears a Model 2 purple fume, which is one of the extinct models, I guess, now.
And that's true, yeah.
You're obviously her favorite brand, you and Nomos. So
say that every episode, Rob, too.
Well, you obviously don't listen to my show. Jeez.
No, I didn't think anyone listened to your show. That's why I'm surprised now.
Yeah, you got to be on your best behavior. Yeah, you're missing out. It's great. We've had some actually decent guests in the past. I just had to scrape the barrel to get you on, but
I know. Yeah, I thought this would be the downhill run from you've peaked.
Yeah, it's all
who do you have on then to recap for the other listener who hasn't?
For the other listeners, are you doing this for my benefit? That's really.
Tell me who the big hitters. Who have we had?
Okay, well, we started with Jean-Claude Biver, so that was pretty big.
Hell. Yeah, no, that is. Were you talking to him, or were you kind of doing? Was this like a YouTube recording of him, and you were voicing over, or was he there on the other end?
It was him. I actually have his phone number. I was texting him on WhatsApp.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
That's
really
cool.
Weird. But was I talking to him, or was he like espousing his philosophy to the world in the inimitable way that he does? It could be either or, to be honest, but he's a fantastic guy to listen to. I was just
very inspirational, isn't he?
It's superb. Just privileged to be on the other end of the microphone.
There's so much energy. I mean, I've watched some interviews with him, and I just want to go to sleep after. I've just give up. He's got far too much energy. It's impressive.
Yeah, he's you get this sense, like, sometimes, maybe it's because I grew up near Manchester, but I would not like to fight him. Like, I think about this, like, that guy,
Even
like,
at that age,
he wouldn't at that age, he wouldn't know when he was beaten. Well, he keeps himself fit. Like, he was saying in the episode, because it got pretty personal. I was asking him, like, oh, do you ever make the same mistake twice in your life? That was leading on from something he'd said about what not to do. And he said only when it comes to sport, because he trains all the time. He goes back running too soon, and he's in the gym always. Like, he's aside from his physical prowess, what I mean is that's the kind of guy that never knows they're beaten. You know, you can hit him as hard as you want.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating punching
violence,
the most influential CEO of history, or violence in general.
It would do well for your kind of watch brand that you're working with.
What? I mean, smacking the most important.
Wearing one of your watches. Yeah,
I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to do that. I have too much respect for him, and I'm scared of him, because I think, like, if you had him in a corner, he'd just fight and fight and fight. He'd never stop. He'd be throwing punches long after he expired, because he's that passionate. He literally said in the show that without his passion, that is watchmaking, he'd sooner die. Like, he can't stop, because he is what he does. And some people might not see that as the ideal way to be, but personally, I do. I really identify with that and admire him for his incredible longevity and just ridiculous contribution to our industry. So that was number one. Then we had Ed Malan from H. Moser. No, not bad. Then we had Laurent Ferrier. Then we had Javier from Chapek, Antoine Pin from Bulgari. Then we had Jupp and Andreas from Fortis, Martin Fry from Erwerk, James Thompson, the Black Badger, Giles Ellis from Schofield, Charis from MB&F, George Bamford, you know him. And I don't know how many. That was the first to add the
That's
Julian.
not bad, Rob. That's not bad. I might have to listen to some of these after.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
I do avoid, though, listening to anything to do with watches after I've had 12 hours of watches normally in a day. But I will, because that sounds really interesting.
So what do you do when you're not doing watches? What are your hobbies? How do you relax?
Well, I have a funny situation where I live in Glasgow in the week and then on my own, and so I just mostly work, and then I go up to Inverness to the family at the weekend, where I try not to work, and then and that's it. So the weekends, we've got a little farm up there, which you call a croft if you're in the Highlands, and although they're not actually the same thing, but for most people they are, and just do kind of outdoorsy stuff that doesn't involve watches or emails.
You like to hike?
I'm going up to Ascent on Friday, which I'm very excited about, and that's and it's going to be snowing on the hills, which I'm not JCB in terms of keeping myself in good physical shape, but so I'm slightly worried about going up a hill in the freezing cold, but it'll be fun, and what's the worst going to happen?
I'm sure you'll be fine. If you got a good jacket, some nice boots.
Oh, I don't know. I'll get some.
I'd say that's key. And take plenty of water.
You reckon boots? Yeah.
I reckon good boots are. So plenty. I'm not joking.
No, I do have walking boots, Rob. I'm going to go up with walking boots on, leave the slippers at home, and bring some hot tea and a jacket and lots of layers. I've actually got a balaclava, which I got this week because it's a novelty level of cold in Glasgow, and there is no one outside. I'm not literally no one, but virtually no one outside because it's so cold.
Yeah, it's like you told me it was -7 today in Glasgow.
-7, 3 days in a row. Yeah,
that's pretty cold for that part of the world.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, people aren't used to it.
No, they're not at all. And let me say this: they are also not used to such fine watches and interesting colours to choose from. Because I'm now perusing through.
Good track back that was, Rob. That was nice. Yeah, no, I like that.
Segueing is my forte, but not segueing in real life on those nonsense 2-wheeled machines that people roll around cities on. I hate them.
No.
Absolutely hate them. The guy that invented them apparently died in an accident where his Segway went off a cliff. Did you hear that?
I did actually. Yeah, I did hear that.
That's hilarious. That is just desserts.
Not sure it's hilarious for everyone, but yeah. But yeah, no, I do get the
I found it hilarious.
I know.
And honestly, I've almost been run over by idiot tourists like zooming up streets that should never be zoomed up in so many cities around Europe now that someone had to pay for that. And,
on segways rather than the scooters, because
segways. That's scooters. I've never nearly been hit by a scooter. It's the Segway because it's controlled by leaning, isn't it? It's a difficult thing to drive.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look very safe. No,
and you get the wrong kind of people on the. And what I mean by that is, if you feel like you're physically incapable of walking somewhere, you shouldn't be charged with operating a machine that requires control of your body, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh shit. Athletes who can happily walk up a hill, they'd be fine on a Segway because they know what they're doing with their body. But when you've got I don't want to draw too fine a point on it, but you know what I'm saying.
Politics. Well,
I guess.
No, yeah.
I'm getting the
maybe a Segway too far at the moment, but yeah. No.
Anyway, back to the original cause of the Segway. The Model 2 comes in 2 sizes, medium and large. Why is it medium and large?
Well, it's not small, Rob. It's not small. It was. When we brought it out, it was small. People were horrified at how it's 6.5 mil. But
it's a beautiful size. It's the size.
Well, that was several years ago. No, 3-4 years ago, and luckily things swung that way. I didn't know they were going to go that way, but I'd been wearing a really lovely little Smith's Deluxe, which is I think 33 millimeters, and. I've been so taken by how easy it is to kind of get full, you move your wrist around and it's not like wearing a 40 mil watch. And so I was just really keen to do something that was small. And so that's how it started out. And it's a good size for so many people. And I still think people are wearing, or maybe going for watches are still a bit big, in my opinion, for them. But yeah, it's nice size. The larger one, of the Model 2 is perhaps better proportioned, I think. But
do you think so?
It is. I think it is when. Well, I have quite big wrists actually, so maybe that. But it is. I think they're both good.
Now, I have tried a Model 2 large on my wrist once when I was in the workshop, but I can't really remember the direct comparison with the Model 2, which I'm the Model 2 Medium, which my girlfriend wears. I love the Model 2 Medium as an object more than the Model 2 large. Seeing it off the wrist.
Yeah, well, she's got one of the first generation, which had, you could get fume dials in, so it's quite a different thing, and the hands are different. We've gone like with the second iteration Model 2, we went from having sort of polished silver hands with lume tips, which she's got, to having heat blued hands with lume tips, which is not a good thing to do if you want an easy life, because as soon as you'll know as a watchmaker, as soon as you put the lume on, you can't repolish and reblue, because it'll just burn the lume off. So it's and the looming is so fine on those, we send them to Switzerland to get loomed, and then they come back. So it's so the hands and I think the design of the hands improved for the second version as well. I'm happier with those.
They're very elegant, aren't they? And a beautiful form, very unusual. Obviously, this is a podcast. People can't see what we can see in front of us, so we need to describe things to them. One of the most interesting, what should we say? I need a good word for this. Hang on, let me think.
54 articles a month, Rob. You can't think of a good word.
I used them all.
Yes, you did.
One of the most interesting qualities of the material vitreous enamel is the way that it has this translucence and opacity of different degrees, which gives the effect of the numbers, when they're pad printed on top, floating slightly above the dial's heart, shall we say. So it's really obvious on the fume dials that were translucent, or that in the case of the Model 1 ones still available, still are translucent. But it's still possible to see that strange hovering effect of the numerals on the Model 2s, which have more opaque dials. So we have 4 colors available in both sizes. They are flax, grey har, is it, you say? Or
it's that har is kind of a word for a fog or a mist in Scotland. So it's like there's a har over the sea. It's this kind of sea fog.
Beautiful. White, and it is very white, and this is cool. It's the last one I would choose in the collection myself personally, but I'm very glad that it exists, because there should be more watches like this. And then there's a racing green, which is the only one that doesn't have heat blued hands. It has heat strawed hands, as we discussed before. So they're a kind of golden color. Very nice.
Yeah, the white one's fun, because that is traditional. That's what enamel watches are normally, is this white. Yeah. And I think there is a lovely quality where you have that blue printing on that white. That combination of blue and white is sort of reminiscent of kind of pottery and sort of Portuguese and pottery and stuff like that, which I've always been very drawn to.
It's incredibly crisp. It's incredibly precise. And it has, so this one, interestingly, it has blue tips on the blued hands. Are they non-luminous, I would imagine?
No, they're blue lume, actually.
Blue lume, wow. But it's quite a dark shade of blue.
It is, yeah. Well, you get into these little details and spend quite a lot of time working these out. But no, it's you're trying to match the printing to the lume. But luckily, the people we work with in Switzerland to do this can kind of colour match anything, so it's quite nice.
What's your favourite colour out of these 4?
I really like the green, actually. I think that racing green is something lovely. I have a bicycle, and I have a couple of old cars that are in that colour, and always been a bit of a sucker for it. So I think green is the one for me.
Oh, I'm torn. I'm actually torn between the 3. Reckon? Oh, well, I don't know.
But not the white.
Not the white. No. I've gone off like pure white dials myself a long time ago. It was, as I said in one previous episode a couple of weeks back, I used to think that there was nothing better than a rose gold cushion-shaped enamel white dial with black Roman numerals, but I have changed drastically since then. I love the shade of grey and the subtlety of the white numerals against it. I think that works really nicely with the blue hands, which I'm not so much a fan on the flax dial, which of the colours though, the flax is probably my favourite because it's so weird. I've never seen a watch dial like that before.
It's the enamelling in the flax is not normal well, none of the colours really are normal watch dial enamels that you
No.
see, but it has a kind of pigmentation in it, which, if that was pigmentation in a white dial or a blue dial or whatever, you would, like, it wouldn't pass. You'd be chiseling it out and refilling it and stuff like that. But there are certain ones. I think the original pink model one had that pigmentation, and it's just this lovely kind of mottled, not texture. It's not kind of, but 2-dimensional pattern. That is just the nature of that particular enamel, which I really like.
It is beautiful and very special and very unusual. So if people haven't seen it, you should go check it out. The website is easy to find. an-OR-dain is spelled ANORDAIN. And the website can be found at an-ORdain.com. That's
Thank you, Rob. That's very
COM.
nice.
No problem. It really is worth checking out because, this is something special. Now, tell me about the inks that you use on the dials, because printing on vitreous enamel is not the same as printing on a pre-painted surface.
Yeah, no, it's not. I remember early on we had a lot of issues with that, actually. We were buying the inks from Switzerland, and they were meant to be specifically for enamel dials, and we were finding that they were flicking off, or they weren't adhering perfectly. So we had a lot of stress with those inks, and then finally we got, in the end, we got inks in that were meant for printing on bottles. So there's obviously a big whiskey industry here, so there were some specialist ink people who were who did pad printing on bottles, and we started using that stuff. And obviously glass and enamel is essentially the same thing, so it worked perfectly. And that's where that's how we kind of got the pad printing going right.
The range of colours that you have is amazing and incredibly subtle as well. I mentioned before on the Model 1 that replaced the post box red, the Japanese oxblood, that you have this coral, or at least that's how I termed it, almost coral print around the outside. And that's the kind of unusual shade you perhaps wouldn't expect to find in the whiskey industry, that's for sure. But
no. Well, they're all blended. They're kind of mixed to order. But the colours for the dials and the printing are, nearly always chosen by the enamelers. So that's one of the, like I think I was saying at the beginning, that one of the lovely things about the company is that you have this big, this kind of big group of people who cross over an awful lot. And the enamelers produce the dials, but they aren't just production. They're all, I think, all art students, graduated in the past 5 or 10 years, and so they have a real creative input into things. So that aesthetic of enamels and printing colors and these things, they come from it comes from that kind of body of people.
That is a special combination. That's really cool. I'm really glad that you've got that one in there. That's a really nice addition to the range. So, talking of the range itself, can we expect it to grow anytime soon?
Yeah, we're always working on new stuff because it's interesting, I suppose. Mainly, what have we got? We've got lots of stuff coming. It's been so slow this year, though. I think this year and bits of last year, the issues with making stuff, especially with the smaller companies in Europe, the things just aren't happening quickly at all. So we've had prototypes that were meant to be here in February that still aren't here now, and so it's very difficult to say when anything's going to happen. But we have got lots of really interesting projects, and I think one area I'm very excited about is doing more within the movements as well, because we have always been this company that makes dials, and it's almost like you're buying a dial with a watch around it. And we have been, we've got 4 watchmakers now. One of them is just does kind of movement development stuff, to playing around with that side of things. So I think that we will start to bring out much more interesting, kind of work on the back of the watch as well as the front.
That will be interesting. You can't say anything just yet.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I always say stuff, and then I say it's going to come out this month, and it never does. So best to just be quiet, probably. But there'll be
no problem.
Interesting stuff coming.
But you got to promise me that when you do have a new model to announce, that you're going to come back on the show and we're going to talk about it.
I would love
because
to.
In addition to having an interview every Thursday, every Tuesday we have an interactive episode. Now that either takes the form of a Q&A session in which Alon and I address questions from our listeners, or it takes the form of a product review, when a brand will send us a watch and we'll put a picture of this watch on all of our social channels a couple of weeks before the episode is recorded and get questions from our audience about that watch. And then we address those questions in the interactive episode. So when you have a new model, you can put one in my hands for a couple of days. I'll give it back to you, I promise. And then
so I could essentially engineer, so I'm asking myself the questions, couldn't I? You know, if I got my mum to go,
you could do that. Yeah, you could.
Could be,
I mean, are you
not
close
that
with your mum?
I mean, she'd probably do that for me, I think. But, yeah. What medium is this on, Facebook or
Instagram? Is your mum on Instagram?
Oh, she does use Instagram. Yeah.
What's her handle? I'm going to follow her. I'm going to DM her.
I don't know. I don't use Instagram.
Bullshit. You don't know it. All right. Okay.
No, I really don't. It's Linda something.
Linda Heath. Is her name Heath? Is that too much of an assumption?
I don't.
Your mum?
No, that's not too much of an assumption. But I don't know what.
Are we talking about your mum?
Yes. Who else?
Linda.
Mum would I be talking about? Yeah.
I don't know, but do you know your mum's name?
Of course, I know her name, but I don't know her Instagram name.
Yeah, but if you know someone's name, you can type it into Instagram and then.
Oh, don't do that. You'll have lots of.
Can you hear me
people
typing?
Yeah, but don't put it out on the internet. Don't tell people what it is. You have to bleep it out, Rob.
Why? She might like. Won't she like the following? She'll love it. She could become an influencer.
She posts things about flowers and beaches and like where she lives.
People like flowers and beaches, mate. It's all right.
There are enough flowers and beaches on the internet as it is without, I don't think she'd appreciate. Well, who knows? I don't think we should be publicising my mum's Instagram. But anyway, and also because now when she asks questions, you'll know who it is, won't you? So I've ruined my own plan.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I've had a little Google. There's a lot of Linda Heaths on Instagram. I don't know which one is your mum, so we're just going to leave it there. But if I see any suspicious questions pop up, I'll double check.
From someone who otherwise just talks about flowers and beaches, yeah.
All right, okay.
That's fair enough.
But yes, theoretically, you could manipulate it. I'm glad you asked that. We did have speculation that one of the early questions we received, which was something along the lines of why has JLC lost its mojo, actually came from JLC's marketing department because they didn't know the answer and they wanted us to answer it for them. But as it turned out, that was just a disgruntled Jaeger Ultra collector.
Have they lost their mojo? I didn't know that.
I don't know. I mean, I think that what the question was driving at was that the brand is very mono model. It's reverso and bust, basically. I mean, the Polaris is an interesting model that from another brand would probably sell a lot better than it does, or at least gain a lot more traction, but it doesn't really seem like a JLC. I personally love the Master Collection, but
when people think a lot of Swiss brands, and they do all right.
You could. Yeah. Well, they do all right.
I'm a huge reverso fan, as I was saying to you before.
Of course. Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't bring that up deliberately. That's literally a question.
Do you think they're listening to this and want to lend as well?
I imagine they are listening. Yeah, they probably are if they know what's good for them.
Have you had them on yet? No, you weren't. They weren't in the list, were they?
No, we haven't had JLC on yet. We probably will have them on next year at some point.
Who would you talk to from them?
The CEO. She's called Catherine Renier. She's been CEO since 2018, and I'd like to have her on. I mean, we haven't had many female voices on the podcast anyway, and she's leading one of the biggest brands to be headed by a female, so that would be pretty cool to get her on. But yeah, maybe she didn't like the question from one of our listeners, why has JLC lost its mojo? Because I guess she thinks it hasn't, and I'd love to hear her take on it. Yeah, we'll ask.
Do speak to her. I'm a big fan. We like the Reverso, and my wife has one.
Okay, Lewis, I think we've got time for one more question before I let you go back to work in freezing cold Glasgow. an-Ordain's is a relatively small brand, still in the process of growing into whatever it may become, whether that's a company that produces more pieces, whether it's a company that employs more people, whether it's a company that has more models and goes into more depth on the watchmaking side of things, as well as the beautiful decorative arts that typify the pieces today. How important have watch fairs, trade fairs, either with other journalists there present or customers been to the development of the an-Ordain's brand and the communication of its message?
That is a good question, Rob. It's really hard to tell, actually, because we don't sell watches in a normal way. You don't see you don't see any feedback from sales or anything. But certainly we do a lot of we do all three worn wound shows, or we are doing those currently. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, but in America we go to San Francisco in the spring, Chicago in the summer, and New York in the autumn, and it's brilliant. Really talking to the people who come to the shows, because you get an awful lot of feedback, and I really like it. I mean, there's lots of people there I've kind of got to know, and it's just nice seeing where the stuff you make ends up, and that people like it, and who's wearing it, and all this. So I don't know. It's more. I think it's easier to kind of chart the increase in people knowing about what we do, rather than I'm not. Yeah, it's hard. I'm not sure how much of the shows is us explaining stuff to people. Well, we do explain stuff to people. I don't know. Think people are learning about us at the show necessarily. If they come over to see us, they normally have read something online, or something like that. But
do you advertise anywhere?
No, we've never done that. And just because I'm not very good at kind of marketing stuff, and we've not needed to. I think that our the past I don't know how many years it is now, 7 or 8 or whatever, has just been all about production, and how do you get over this challenge or that challenge? How do you make this, or how or the design of it? It's all about creating, and that suits us very well. And we are very lucky that we don't have to stress about sales or advertising and all that stuff, because it's just something we haven't needed to do. But yeah.
That's really interesting that you're actually able to have established yourselves in this way. Is that really from word of mouth of consumers, or the industry, just because you were a brand that people like me in the journalistic roles took an interest in early on? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think it's just it's not a sound strategy, I'm sure, for to be applied to other businesses. But if you're doing something interesting, yes, yeah. But if, kind of build it and they'll come idea. But I do think if you're doing something that's interesting, people will want to talk about it. So and that seems to have been what's happened. And we're there's really 2 other companies that are doing kind of dial enameling on a largish scale, by enameling standards, and they're both very different from us. And I think when we're kind of a bunch of ex-art students in Glasgow doing some pretty interesting dial making, and so people, it's different, and I think people do kind of get interested and talk about it, and I think that's what got us going, really. But yeah, I think if you've got to advertise stuff a lot and really push it, then it's probably, maybe it's not. I don't know. I've not done advertising. Well, no, I wouldn't say that necessarily, but I mean, I don't know much about that side of things, but yeah, no, we've been very fortunate. So it's good.
Well, that's good. It's good. I mean, it's kind of karma, in my opinion. Like you do the right thing, you should get the right result, and you are doing the right thing, and by the looks of things, you're getting the right result. So that's always good to see, because we see a lot of. Yeah. I mean, you're the opposite of a hype brand, right? I mean, I read a very good article by a guy called David Vaucher the other day. He got in touch on Instagram. I'd never heard of him before in my life. I heard of his name, of course, very famous watchmaking name. But he sent me a link to his blog, and he's so good. I'm going to bring him on board. I'm going to get him on the Real Time show, because I like him. And he wrote this brilliant takedown of the Patek Philippe Tiffany 5711, and how watchmaking had gone so far in the wrong direction that this was, the most talked about release of the year. And to compare that to, we could even get a pretty good visual comparison to one of your old models, one of your now unavailable models. But there was a Model 2 with a dial, I think it was called Tor Blue, almost sort of turquoise color. You put those 2 models next to one another, and you have one Tiffany blue dial that is everything that's right with the industry, and one that's everything wrong with it. And one was an affordable, I would guess, around £1,500 before taxes, and the other one is complete unobtainium. I think there was 170 made, and they were maybe about $50,000 or $60,000 to begin with, but one retail for several million. And on the one side, David's article really expressed the crushing depression associated with this phenomenon. But on the other, we live in maybe the richest era of watchmaking ever, where there are so many good up-and-coming creatives, and you, of course, are leading the charge of that. And I've thought that for a long time, and the guys at Fratello also think that as well, and every other media outlet I've worked with over the past few years has the same opinion. And of course, you've worked with Felix and Andy at the OT with their special edition Pink model, which was a success itself, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was really fun. Yeah, it's very, very kind of you to say something from. I wouldn't take that all, but Felix and Andy did that. I just wanted to do that project so I could make another Pink watch, really. And but no, I really like the aesthetic of their. I know it sounds weird, aesthetic of their podcast, but they had some really cool. Well, they have some really cool kind of some graphics with it, and just thought it'd be fun.
It's a lovely outlet, a beautiful endeavor by both of them, and I'm really glad you guys work together. It's set a good standard, to be honest. Like that's what you should do that with all podcasts. Lol.
It was a lot of work for 20 watches, I think.
Is that you only made 20 pieces?
Yeah, we don't make many of anything, really. I mean, I think
true.
we don't make many of anything, so it wasn't. It was just how much time we could put on it.
Oh, well, despite the fact that you don't make many of anything, you are one of the busiest people I know in the industry. So I'm going to let you go and continue making the few watches that you do make. And next time, and there will be a next time, and hopefully it won't be very long.
I hope so.
Yeah, I really hope that we have a model of a number higher than 2 to discuss.
We'll get you something. Yeah, don't worry. We'll get you something.
Okay, good man. Yeah. All right, thanks, Lewis. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks, Rob. Nice to chat.
Guys, if you want to get in touch with the Real Time Show, please reach out to us. You can do that via Instagram. You can find me online at RobNuds, that's ROBNUDDS, or you can find my regular co-host, Alan Ben Joseph, on Instagram at Alan Ben Joseph, ALONBENJOSEPH, or you can email us directly, either rob@therealtime.show or alon@therealtime.show. We'll be back next week with another Q&A session from our listeners and also another interview in the studio. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.
That was slick, Rob.